Welcome to the Create a Life That Is Beautiful podcast, your go-to resource for personal development and coaching. I'm your host, Leticia Ringe, and I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Today's episode is another business-focused episode. This is for any of you in business or thinking about being in business, and the topic we'll be covering today is pivoting in business. Should I pivot my business? How do I know when to pivot? And do I stick it out or do I cut my losses and start fresh? So we explore the topic of pivoting in business in many different contexts. Sometimes it's because you want to try something new. Other times it's because something in your business isn't working. In other times it's because you're simply just not enjoying what you're doing anymore. And for other times, it's because something about your business is actually conflicting with your personal goals, or actually even your more vital business goals. So we all have different reasons for considering pivoting. And in today's episode, I'm going to teach you how to approach the topic of whether you should pivot in business using a method, let's call it, that you can apply no matter what your reason is for considering the topic of pivoting. And through the method I'm going to be sharing, it's going to help you get clear on whether you actually want to pivot in your business and also what other options there actually are. Because the way that our brain tends to consider the topic of pivoting is in a very binary way. It thinks I either keep doing what I have been doing or I do something completely different. And usually they are the two options. But there are many, many other options that you can consider. And when you get really, really clear on what is motivating your reason for wanting to pivot, when you get clear on what your actual goals are, it makes it a lot easier to determine which option actually suits you best. So now let's go back to my own personal journey with pivoting. I've wanted to share an episode on this subject since 2023 when I pivoted in my business. I've wanted to share with you what I learned through that journey because I know that it caused me a lot of resistance and confusion leading up to pivoting in my business. And now that it's been about 1.5 years since then, I've learned a lot and I've also continued to pivot in my business to bring me to a place that I really want to be in my business for the long term. So I know many of you have been watching my journey. You've watched me move from specializing and talking only about business, most notably in the industry of coaching, healing, personal development. So for business owners who run a coaching, healing, or transformational / personal development business. And you've also seen me then switch to specializing in relationships and most notably conscious relationships. I have absolutely loved this journey because before I did the pivot in 2023, pivoting in my business was, first of all, something just not on my radar. I wanted something to change in my business, but I had no idea what it would be. And when I moved into relationship coaching, it was like an epiphany. All of a sudden, I knew that I needed to talk about this. I knew that I needed to share what I'd learned. It was very obvious. But that came after a period where I sat in the abyss, where I gave myself space, where I knew that I was coming to the end of my business as it was, and I was creating space for something new to arise. But what I've learned through that process, and I've learned this twice actually, usually the way that I tend to make big changes in my life is I take a leap of faith. I really close whatever it was I was doing, bring it to completion. I sit in the unknown and then I start the thing. And that works really well for me and my personality because I have a lot of trouble letting go of things that I know need to come to an end, and I hold on to them, and I use that as a reason not to move on to the next thing. So for me, my strategy has been to force myself to complete so that I'm then forced to consider something new and to open up to something new, and then clarity comes through, and that works for me. But it can be quite stressful, and it is a risk. So I don't like to recommend that strategy for most people. I think that there are much more supportive and easeful ways to do it, ones where you can still continue being supported by what is working for you, whether that's your business as it currently is, or whether it's a job that you're in or something else in your life that you're thinking about changing, and really coming up with a plan that will meet you through that transition so that you're being supported by the old thing, and then also creating space to receive clarity on the new thing and also start taking steps towards it. So I want you to know, with that in mind, that it's not a binary decision. It's not that you have to rush from one thing to the other and that you have to complete one thing before you start the other. There are options that allow you to have a transitional period and even allow you to play in the new thing you're thinking of before you actually commit to it. Because I know through my own experience pivoting in maybe more minor ways in my business before I made a major pivot from business to relationship coaching, I would play around with different offers. I would play around with different strategies. I'd play around with different ways of delivering my offers. And if I didn't like it when I was playing around with it, I would just go back to the way I was doing it before. More often, I would learn something new, and then I would take that new element and I'd bring that into what was working before, and it would give me more information about what was really the thing that needed to be changed. And most of the time, it's not the whole enchilada, it's just a little bit of the enchilada that needed to change. And it's the same for business, and it's the same for probably most areas of life. So the way it unfolded for me was that in 2022, I knew that something in my business needed to change, but I had no idea what it was. I just knew that something was coming to an end. The way I was doing business was coming to an end. And then I had a number of external circumstances that really showed me it's time to bring your business coaching, your core offers as you know it, which were very successful. They generated multiple six figures in revenue per year. And they were also offers that I really enjoyed delivering, offers that brought a lot of success and results for my clients, ones that I had been perfecting over many years, and they were also offers that I felt really committed to for the long term. And it became clear to me at the end of 2022 that it was time to bring those to an ending. I didn't know for how long. I didn't know whether it would be forever. I didn't know whether they would be offers I would bring back. I just knew it needed to come to an end for me because I wasn't able to allow my brain to receive new ideas and new inspiration while I was holding and executing those offers, because I was running group programs, most notably my mastermind, or what I call my holistic business mistress mind. That required a lot of my energy to hold. Group programs do require a lot of energy to hold. I had many people I was working with over my group programs, and I wanted to be on top of all the people in those programs and really be delivering those to the best that I could. And I also had priorities outside of my business that I really wanted to prioritize. At that time, that included traveling. I was traveling all over the world. So when I wasn't working on my business, I was out living my life, making new friends, trying new things, experiencing a new place. So the time and energy I had to give my business had certain limits. And I knew with running those offerings as well as my personal priorities, which is the whole point of being in business, is that I'm able to live the life that I want. I was unable to have space for considering this new project, this new iteration of my business. So at the end of 2022, when my programs were coming to an end, right at the end, I realized, okay, we're going to bring these to completion. And so I announced that and brought the offerings to completion at the end of 2022. Then I went into my second 6-week break for the year. And during that time at the end of the year, I always walk myself through my end of year process. There's only been very few times each year where I haven't done it. And at the end of 2022, it was a year where I was going through that process again, and I received so many incredible insights. I honestly love this process so much. I highly recommend it. I actually put it into a workbook for you all so that you can buy it whenever you want to go through it yourself, because it truly is the thing I use in my life and my business to really reflect on my year, understand who I am today, and get clear on where I'm going and what I'm creating and bringing to life in the next year ahead. And that workbook is called Create Your Beautiful Year. And you can buy that over on my website at leticiaringe.com. If you look at the section that says courses, you'll find it there. So here I was completing my workbook over December and January. And somewhere through that process, I got really clear that I really wanted to bring this relationship coaching offering to life. But I was really scared to do that, even though I'd been coaching people on love and relationships from the beginning of my coaching business back in 2017. It wasn't something I'd focused on. And I'd kind of forgotten that relationships had always been something that I have supported people with. I also worked as a family lawyer. I think I had a lot of resistance at that time to really integrating my career as a lawyer, because it was something I'd really walked away from identifying with. Some people who move from being a lawyer into another area of business, or like me into coaching, they really talk about being a lawyer because that was an identity they had. It's a way for people to relate to them. But honestly, I had felt I didn't want people to relate to me on that level. So although I would talk about it sometimes, I really didn't attach to having been a lawyer, and I really didn't identify myself as a lawyer. In fact, I wanted to move as far away as possible from it, because I was really exploring a totally different identity within myself. So during that time, I reintegrated these past identities, and it was a really, really interesting process. And it became really, really obvious how I wanted to support people, that I was really passionate sharing on the topic of love and relationships, particularly after going through my own 10-year romantic relationship ending, bringing that to a conscious completion, moving into dating and intentionally focusing on dating in a conscious way, and creating tools as I stepped into a new romantic relationship with my partner at the time. And it was so notably different to anything I was seeing out there. It was creating such an incredible experience. As I traveled the world, I was going to places like Portugal and Mexico, the US, London. I was really all over the place. And as I was connecting with people all over my travels, I was just talking about relationships all the time. I was talking about my perspective on it. I was talking about how I'm approaching dating, how I'm approaching starting a new relationship, how I'm approaching commitment, what I've learned about relationships. And I really noticed that my perspective on the topic was very different. And I also realized the way that I had shown up in my 10-year relationship and what I'd learned about relationships through that relationship, I thought was just common sense. But in fact, these were skills that most people, even around the same age as me, even for some people who had experienced a long-term relationship like I had, these were skills a lot of people didn't have. And it was because of my personal experiences, because of my work in family law, my study of psychology throughout my life, the experiences I had as a child, the experiences I had with relationships throughout my teens, my 20s and into my 30s. All of these experiences had given me a point of view that I couldn't find anywhere else. And so obviously that was something that I wanted to teach and share with people, because I could see that I could make a difference. Now, all of this just happened organically. I didn't try to find it. It happened through step by step, through conversations. I remember talking to someone in late 2022, and I explained the way I perceived relationships. And she said to me, "Oh, you mean conscious relating?" I remember a couple of months before that, I was at a retreat of one of my clients and I was sharing again about my journey with dating. And I announced, I think I'm going to work in the relationship space. But all of these moments were so unconscious at the time. I just blurted them out of my mouth. I didn't think about them again. I didn't go away and think about how I'm going to create a relationship coaching business. They were just things said as asides that I didn't think about at all. And it wasn't until early 2023 that I actually decided this is something I want to do. And then it took me a little bit of time after making that decision to actually be confident enough to go ahead with it and commit to it. So I think it was March, maybe April, I think March, when I finally announced my perspective on romantic relationships, and I brought what I called conscious romantic relationships to my community. From that point, I completely committed to serving my community on the topic of love and relationships. And primarily since then, that has been my focus in my business. And I've created an entire body of work that supports people on approaching all 6 phases of the romantic relationship cycle consciously. Everything from deciding whether to leave a relationship, to completing a relationship, to healing after a relationship has ended, to dating, to starting a new relationship, and to supporting and improving a long-term relationship. I'm so proud of what I've created. It's some of the best work I've ever done. I would also say my work on holistic business is some of the best work I've ever done, and I'm really proud of it. And so as I allowed that pivot to happen and I completely let go of holistic business and my business coaching and I moved into conscious romantic relationships, I really thought, I don't think I'm going to do any other kind of coaching anymore. This is what I want to do. I really feel that this is my legacy. It's what I've been brought here to create. However, this year in 2024, because of some external circumstances again, I have been brought to a new layer of integration of the different ways I can support people and my past identities. And this has led me increasingly to want to talk about not only romantic relationships, but also other kinds of relationships like friendships, family, professional relationships, leadership, managing people, and wanting to support people with not only business, but also other areas of life, generally making over your life, designing your life intentionally, focusing on a specific area or goal of your life, and generally just applying coaching in all the amazing ways you can apply coaching to literally change your life. That's my passion. I had no idea why. I just knew that this is what I wanted to do. And this year, my pivot question has been, well, how can I talk about all of these in a way that really feels good to me? And it's taken me a little bit of time to land on that. I feel that I have now landed on the way that I'll be executing this. And I also now am clear on why I want to talk about all of these areas, where I'm going in terms of the long-term vision of my business. But it took me moving through this journey and making these pivots and learning along the way to be able to have that clarity. I didn't have it before. I just had to trust each stage of the process. So what I want you all to think about and to learn from my journey is that if you're being called to pivot, it's really important to know why you want to pivot, what's motivating it. Because if I had have decided that business coaching was done forever and the reason I wanted to change was because there was something wrong with business coaching, I would have blown up my coaching business in terms of the business focus instead of leaving it open in the way that I did, which has enabled me to continue serving the same community and also in a position where I've been able to really easily and gracefully dip back into business coaching as I've wanted. And sometimes I think we think that we need to, and we do this in relationships as well, we have to almost hate on the thing we're bringing to a close in order to give ourselves permission to end it. And that's simply not the case. And A lot of the time, what you complete does come back into your life in some way, or you begin to appreciate it in a way that you couldn't appreciate it before. Certainly for me, this year in 2024, my perspective of the corporate world, for instance, and even my work as a lawyer has radically shifted. I have even been interested in returning to the corporate world as a client to support in a coaching capacity because the environment in the corporate world has changed so much. It's very different to what it was when I was in the corporate world, and the reasons that I had for leaving the corporate world are now not there to the same degree they were. And I now see a new way that I could help in a corporate capacity. So this has been a really good lesson for me because my pivot from corporate, which I thought would be forever, has had me realize that nothing is forever and things can come back into your life. And so the way we bring a moment in life to completion should be done with a lot of grace and understanding that that thing might come back into your life in the future in a way that you didn't understand. Okay, so let's talk about the method then. The first step is you really want to know what your goals are in both business and life. If you're feeling the need to pivot, it's likely because something needs to change. It could be that the way you're perceiving your business, your offers, your strategies, your team, your marketing, your sales, your delivery of your offers, it could simply be that something about the way you look at your business needs to change, or it could be that actually something in the business does need to change. Additionally, it could be that we need to shift your focus to something completely different, but you will not be able to know what needs to change if you don't know what your goals are. I am very much a big believer in goals, even if they're very general goals versus very specific goals that will depend on you as a person. Either way, I take a huge stand for the power of goals in creating a life that you want, in having successful coaching programs, and even if that's your self-coaching, it's so important to know what your goals are because when you know what your goals are, it makes decision-making so much easier. So you want to know what your goals are in both business and life, because sometimes the reason you want to pivot is because your business is getting in the way of your life. At other times, it's because some of your business goals are getting in the way of other business goals, and you need to know which are the priority. So it's really important to know what your goals are in both business and life. So if you're not sure what they are, I would take a moment right now just to jot down, what do you think your goals are in business and life? And you don't need to have a lot of them. In fact, the fewer goals you have, the better. So ask yourself what your priorities are and write down perhaps 3 goals for business and 3 goals for life. What are your top priorities right now? The way that I work with all of my clients in business is always to work backwards. We're always looking at what do you want to create in terms of the grand vision, and then we're working our way backwards. So we'll start with bigger goals, we'll bring that back to smaller goals, we'll bring that back to the day-to-day. That is really the best way I find to focus on executing a big change in your life, whether it's in business or also in another area of your life. So to keep things really simple, just know what your goals are, business and life, the top 3. Don't worry if they're a short-term goal or a big-term goal. Just write down at least 3 for business and life. The second part of this method for pivoting is then to know what pivoting means to you in this instance. So ask yourself, what does pivoting mean to me? When I say I'm thinking about pivoting, should I pivot? What does that actually mean to you? Because like I've just shown in my story, what pivoting meant to me meant different things along my pivoting journey. When I pivoted from corporate into a business, pivoting meant leaving a career and starting an entirely new career from scratch. When I pivoted from business coaching into relationship coaching, that meant bringing my very successful business programs that I had envisioned growing and building and continuing to refine and perfect for many years ahead to completion, bringing them to a close. And it meant stepping into a space that was unknown so that something new could emerge that I wasn't yet aware of. Even when I took the leap and I pivoted from corporate into business, I knew I wanted to create a business in personal development. I didn't know the specifics of what that would look like, but I had some clarity. When I moved from business coaching, I had no clarity. I didn't know what that next thing was. I just knew something new was coming. So I had even more unknowns in that situation. Then this year in 2024, when I have pivoted from just focusing on relationship coaching to opening up my business and my coaching to talk about all different types of coaching, it has been not about starting something entirely new. It has been pivoting to open my business up in a bigger way. So these are different kinds of pivots, right? And they're impacting me in different ways. So I want you to ask, when you're asking yourself, do I want to pivot? What does pivoting actually mean to you? That's going to help you get clear on exactly what you're talking about. Because sometimes our brain makes it a much bigger deal than it actually is. So getting back to the facts of what you're actually talking about will help you to not feel so overwhelmed. It also helps you to assess whether that pivot is actually something you want to make. So that's the second step in this method. The third step is to know why you want to pivot. What we're asking ourselves here is, what is motivating the pivot? And I have a number of questions for you to consider here. The first is, why do I want to pivot? Just ask that more open question, see what comes up for you. The second question is, what am I hoping I will get from pivoting? And the third and final question here is, what am I hoping to escape or avoid by pivoting? So these three questions should reveal to you what your motivations are for wanting to pivot. That brings us to the fourth step in my method for deciding whether you want to pivot in business. And that fourth step is to assess the validity of these motivations. So you really want to fact check your reasons, because most of those answers you will have gotten from the three questions you just answered are thoughts. You want to ask yourself, are these thoughts actually true? Are these really factual? For instance, if one of your motivations for wanting to pivot is that what you're doing in your business isn't working because you're not meeting specific targets, maybe it's revenue, maybe it's other metrics, maybe you're not seeing your clients get the success you desire them to have, you want to ask yourself, have I really tried enough to know whether it's truly something that is working or not? For instance, you might have an offer and you might have been validating that offer. You might be trying to sell it. I call validating an offer the process you go through when you're deciding whether your community wants what you're selling. So I recommend giving yourself a 90-day period where you're committed to a strategy, you execute that strategy, you believe in the strategy, and at the end of the 90 days, you would assess the results and you would ask yourself what was working and what wasn't working about that strategy. And then as a result of the information you get, you're then going to tweak the way you focus up for the next 90 days. So if you're telling yourself your offer doesn't work, but you haven't even executed the strategy over 90 days, you didn't even execute what you set out to do because of mindset, maybe you got distracted, maybe there was some other reason, then you can't truly say it's something that your community doesn't want, can you? Because you haven't actually done the work to get that feedback. So you really need to assess the validity as well of the answers you got from that third step and whether those motivations are even true. Also, when you're assessing the validity of your motivations, you want to ask whether you like your reasons for wanting to pivot. Do these seem like good enough reasons for wanting to pivot? Are these reasons I can stand behind? If your answer is yes, then I would recommend you then move to step 5, which is to consider your options. Typically, we approach pivoting in a binary mindset. I either stop doing the business altogether, or I continue doing the business exactly as it is. We do this in romantic relationships as well. We say, I'm either going to accept things as they are, even though they're really not working for me in some way, or I'm going to just leave the relationship. And there's literally nothing in between. But the truth of the matter is there are so many other options. And when we're clear on what our motivations are and we've assessed the validity of those motivations, and if we're realizing that our motivations aren't valid, we want to get clear on what the truth actually is. And this is then going to reveal other options that will meet your business and life goals, and that also help you to pivot in a way that actually meets your motivations for pivoting. So you want to write down as many options as you can so that you can show your brain that you do have more options than the two it's probably thinking about. And as you consider those options, I want you then to feel into each option and notice whether one just feels right. For example, this is not related to business, but recently I had a trip planned with a friend and I was trying to figure out whether I should go on the trip because something wasn't feeling right. I was telling myself I either go on the trip or I don't go on the trip. They were the two options. But as I worked my way through a very similar process to the one I'm giving you here, a third option, and then a fourth option, and then a fifth option became really obvious. These other options didn't mean I had to either go through with the plan unchanged or completely cancel the plans altogether. In fact, I got to have other alternative options that allowed me to still meet my goals and my motivations. So I could come back into alignment and still move forward in a way that felt really good to me. So as you work your way through your list of options, you'll probably find that there is an option that just feels right. I know for me in that situation, it was like a breath of relief. Oh, that's it. Why hadn't I thought of that before? So if you're looking through that list and you still are feeling none of these options are really a fit, just give yourself more time. Give yourself more time to allow more options to come through for you. By knowing what your goals are, by knowing what pivoting means to you in this instance and why you want to pivot, and assessing the validity of those motivations and getting to the truth, and then considering other options, you will allow more options to come through as well. And then that will set you up to pivot in a way that is truly right for you. So, questions to consider. What are my goals? What does pivoting mean to me? Why do I want to pivot? What am I hoping I'll get from pivoting? What am I hoping to escape or avoid from pivoting? Have I really tried enough to know whether it's truly not working? Do I like my reasons for wanting to pivot? Is pivoting aligned with my goals? And what options do I actually have? These questions will help you to choose whether or not to pivot so that you can finally answer this question. And please know that if you do decide to pivot, don't burn your bridges, because what you're pivoting from might have some use for you at some point in the future. Whether that's a strategy you decide to abandon, whether that's a business you decide to complete, or an offer you decide to complete, or whether it's a career change or a pivot in another area of your life. Know that it might be the right decision for now, but it might be the decision that sets you up to have a better experience of your business. And it might also be the pivot needed to help you come back to your business, the exact offer you're executing right now, in a more aligned way. And that could be the real purpose of this pivot, rather than you thinking the new pivot is the way you're going to do and be in business forever. It just might not be the case. And none of us will know until it's already happened. This is how life works. We only get the information we need right now. We have a vision, the vision changes. We just take the best steps we can right now. And it's never a straight linear line to moving towards that vision, because the vision's always changing, our information's always changing, and sometimes we need to course correct so we can come back and be in a more sustainable, powerful, and joyful place in our business, just like in every other area of life. All right, my beautiful friends, I'm going to leave it here. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're looking for any support, either coaching one-to-one in your business or business support services, including operations like your project management, team management, social media management, marketing and sales processes, or online business management, you can check out all the ways I can support you at leticiaringe.com/coaching. And I also recommend, if you are interested in joining my signature business mastermind, the Holistic Business Mistress Mind, you stay tuned, because that is something that will be opening up again soon. And I'll be sharing the details here when that is open for enrollment. I'll see you in our next episode. Goodbye. Thank you for listening to the Create a Life That Is Beautiful podcast, your go-to resource for personal development and coaching. To deepen your learning and practice, make sure you're subscribed to receive our community newsletter. Subscribe at leticiaringe.com/newsletter. And if you haven't yet left a 5-star review for the podcast, we ask that you please do that now, so that this podcast can reach other listeners who also want to join us in creating a life that is beautiful.